Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's an immense pleasure to be here among the movers and shakers of the world of e-commerce and of food. I am afraid I'm not going to use a PowerPoint presentation. I'm not particularly good at that. I find that it often gives me very little power, and there's often hardly any point for me to use that. So you will have to stick with my face. I'll be trying to give you a bit of a different angle. As mentioned, I work now for the Internal Market Director General of the European Commission. It's something relatively new for me as well. I come from an experience of 15 years in consumer safety, pharmaceuticals, including veterinary pharmaceuticals and feed safety. So I had a crash course in more consumer behavioral and economic aspects of the issue. We hear a lot about e-commerce today, but e-commerce of food, this is something I really believe we should be talking more about. And so I would like to compliment the organizers for bringing together this very timely event. As consumers, we live in exciting times. The world is changing fast. Digital technologies are transforming retail. They offer us as consumers new ways to search, compare, purchase, and receive goods online, including our daily meal. In the past, the consumer journey for food was pretty straightforward. You did your shopping list. You went to a brick-and-mortar store to buy your groceries. It's largely the case today as well, but this journey is, even if you buy from a brick-and-mortar store, is more complex. It includes various phases of pre-purchase exploration, an over-comprehensive, often shopping experience, and post-purchase engagement. Time has become a precious commodity. Today's connected consumers expect more and more of their transactions to be digitally seamless. This is a positive challenge, but one which also brings disruption and a need for change. Clearly, food companies and all operators in the food supply chain need to keep the pace and surf this wave. Moreover, we, policymakers and enforcers at EU and national level, have to move at least equally fast to ensure an enabling environment. We've heard from Tim, for example, a lot about the modernization of legislation to keep up the pace in this area. I'll give you a bit of a picture on regulation in the internal market area. We need to enable the change that citizens, consumers are demanding, that we as citizens, as consumers are demanding. Every part of the food chain, of the food supply chain, has a shared responsibility here. The recent European Parliament elections have shown that Europeans care about a Europe that is ready to respond to future challenges. They've also shown a wish for a certain change of direction towards a more sustainable and forward-looking Europe that puts its citizens at its center. Stakeholders are calling for sustainable food systems that not only respond to consumer needs, but are also able to anticipate them. Hence the question, can we use technology to make commerce more economically, but also environmentally and socially sustainable? Food is unique among consumer goods. It's intrinsically close to us as consumers. It has a direct impact on our health. Of course, I don't have to tell control authorities about this, and our children's health. It is an integral part of our European cultures, and as an Italian, I would like to underline the cultures and traditions. It has a strong social component. At my department, the EU Commission, we've been stirring an EU-wide debate on some of the most pressing issues for the food sector in Europe. As Tim also reminded, this is the largest manufacturing sector in Europe, both in terms of turnover and in terms of employment. It is almost exclusively in terms of numbers composed, but largely also in terms of employment by small and medium enterprises. A few years ago, the Commission, the Internal Market and Industry Department, set up a forum for a better functioning food supply chain It's a broad platform where representatives of the entire food chain and national authorities of all the member states exchange ideas. A core topic in the last period of this forum was how to increase the competitiveness of the food supply chain and digitalization, and all the issues around digitalization was unanimously identified as a major driver. Many of the problems in the food sectors are common for Europeans, even if proposed solutions may differ. More often than not, the driving force is the consumer. Consumers of today are complicated beings. While price remains one of the top drivers for consumer choice, quality, safety, and convenience play a gigantic role. We're witnessing an unprecedented trend towards health and well-being, hence the problems with food supplements sold online, among other things. We see growing environmental concerns and a request for ethically sourced and fairly traded food. Consumers want to know where their food is coming from and how it is produced. They request honesty and transparency about their food choices. Here, the online world offers endless possibilities to tell the story behind your product. The globalization of food chain goes hand in hand with a demand for short and local chains and a direct link to the producer, and e-commerce has a clear role to play here. Technology is changing the way we produce, buy, and consume our food. New solutions are in place, from food apps to the supermarket of the future, from using medical scanners and augmenting reality glasses for cutting animal carcasses and increasing yields, to satellite observation and precision agriculture. Operators are starting to use blockchain for tracing products from farm to fork. Smart packaging can tell us when our food expires. Here are just a few examples. Technology is an enabler, but also a challenge for food producers. The food sector is sometimes considered a relatively low innovation field, even if we have excellent examples of food innovation across Europe. Today's consumers, especially millennials, are looking at food no longer only as a product to consume, but as an experience. This creates enormous opportunities for niche products and personalization of food offers. These trends, together with changing lifestyles, the right here, right now attitude of consumers, especially young consumers and online consumers, and the look for convenience holds a strong case for food e-commerce. Global e-commerce revenues continue to grow at a pace which is faster than most other sectors. You've seen data in the two previous presentations, but I mean the most popular groups of goods sold online are 1, fashion, 2, electronics and media, 3, toys, hobby, and DIY products. They account for almost 3/4 of all goods sold online. Out of the different segments, food is still a relatively small one. Different product categories within food and drinks may show different levels of potential for online shopping, and virtual baskets do not necessarily mirror physical ones. Some categories are simply better suited for e-commerce than others. A longer shelf life, the price-to-weight ratio, and regularity of use are some enablers for choosing to buy food online. On the other hand, the urgency for obtaining a product, perishability, and the need for inspection may present barriers. The food sector has additional responsibility when it comes to online delivery to guarantee the safety of traceability of food, and we've heard a lot, especially in the first presentation, about this. Generally, the adoption of online buys of fresh and frozen food remains slower compared to packaged food. The correct choice of expiry date can be a challenge for online retailers. And the vast majority of everyday products, including, of course, food, are still purchased in Europe in traditional brick-and-mortar stores. When it comes to buying food, China is in the lead in e-commerce, followed by the US. Europe is number 3. However, according to Euromonitor, food and drink accounts for 12% of online sales in the EU, which is a sizable market, and Europe has a considerable potential for expanding. I talk about the EU market, but I mean, this is far from homogeneous in this respect. There are significant differences between the EU countries in the take-up of online sales of food. The UK is way ahead of most of other member states in this respect. Then we have Germany, followed by France and Spain, with Sweden and Italy compete for 5th place. The adoption of online food sales in Eastern Europe is still relatively low. One might think that this is linked to cultural background, but the factors are more complex, and culture and traditions play an interesting part in this. We're social beings, and the sensory aspect and the sensory part of the food buying experience is still strong when we choose, in particular, fresh food. Physical grocery shops will not become extinct anytime soon. Their success will depend more and more on their ability to offer a personal touch and create a shopping experience. We're seeing, for instance, in Brussels, in the large supermarkets of the Deleuze chain, there are sushi chefs preparing sushi live for consumers. Supermarkets like Italy, which is a grocerant, which blurs the line between a supermarket and a restaurant, which is expanding across Europe and is already present in the United States, are places where you can have a full food and drink experience, and they are becoming a consumer favorite. Then, of course, there is a long list of other factors that can shift the balance from physical to online purchase. Availability, logistics, efficient controls, and the right technology all play an important role. Forecasting consumers' needs and anticipating personal preferences are key assets for online sales. This has been true for all the most advanced e-commerce sectors, and is true for food. And indeed, despite the challenges, e-commerce in food is growing worldwide and in the EU. The annual growth rate is estimated at about 10.3% globally. So despite its smaller size in absolute terms, this makes food and beverages the fastest growing category worldwide. In order to have more people buy their food online, you have to make it seamlessly easy for them to do so, logistically and in a timely manner. You also need to make them feel good about it. Hence, the environmental footprint is important when it comes to logistics. Waste and packaging remain a challenge, in particular for e-commerce, offering opportunities also to invent viable ways to reuse and multi-use food packaging. The problem is, of course, not unique to e-commerce. How can we decrease packaging without affecting product quality and conservation? Consumer demand is strong in this area, and we have seen a strong citizens' response to the EU plastic strategy. Europeans really resonated with the idea of reducing plastic waste. Major challenges in food delivery concern scaling and logistics. Operators need to ensure that the cold chain is not interrupted and groceries maintain their quality. Orders might have to be fulfilled at very short notice, so stocks are important. And talking about logistics, we have already excellent examples of sustainable efficiency, but despite the progress made by many companies, some of which are present here today, in many EU countries, delivery costs for groceries remain high for the average consumers. There's clearly space for optimization. Even if new and futuristic solutions are already here, some more straightforward, other more interesting. You probably heard of Starship, the self-driving food delivery robot launched by the co-founders of Skype. And if you allow me for a moment of publicity, it is less known that Skype was one of the first tech startups created with EU financial support. So Europe might not be number one in food e-commerce, but the growth potential is there. I'm sure I'm preaching largely to the converted. By the way, just a little instant poll. How many of you have bought food online in the last 6 months, say? Yeah. I think you're more than representative of the average consumer. But, you know, there is an opportunity for growth there, and it would be interesting to make the most of this potential without undermining consumer demands for safe, sustainable food, and without disrupting the single market. I see a big responsibility here for businesses, but also for us policymakers to provide the necessary framework conditions. So besides the area of food safety and controls, what is the role of the European Commission when it comes to e-commerce across all sectors? We have an initiative called the EU Single Market. E-commerce revenues in Europe are expected to grow at a compound annual rate from here to 2023 of about 7%. In the EU, 7 out of 10 internet users made online purchases in 2018, and 36% of EU online shoppers order goods or services from sellers in other European countries. This already makes a strong case for a single market when it comes to e-commerce. E-commerce is also growing among SMEs, which is particularly important in the food area, in the food and drink area. Hence, it's no surprise that e-commerce is one of the cornerstones of the EU digital single market strategy. A few examples of this is ending unjustified cross-border barriers. We are a single market. Facilitate cheaper cross-border parcel deliveries. Protecting online consumer rights, and this includes redress. Promote cross-border access to online content. We've taken several steps to make this easier and safer for European consumers to shop online. Among these actions, I would like to mention a new rule to address unjustified geo-blocking, which is a particularly hateful experience if you are a European consumer and you want to buy something in another member state. A revised payment service directive and new rules on cross-border parcel delivery services. Often you live near a border, you buy something from across the border, it costs you much more than buying from far away in your country. A new regulation on fairness and transparency in online platforms will apply next year. Revised consumer rules that Tim mentioned, so I won't go back on them. And new VAT rules for online sales. What has been and will be the expected impact? We've seen important improvement with regard to e-commerce in the EU. More businesses sell in other EU countries. We have an improved legal framework and updated consumer protection rules. Digital contract rules grant consumers more rights online and give them confidence, which is key to buy online, in particular from other member states. And this is an important enabler from cross-border e-commerce. Improved transparency and dispute resolutions in the platforms economy, in the marketplace, an online marketplace economy, is a major step forward towards innovation opportunities, trust, and regulatory predictability in the economy. The end of roaming charges, the end of unjustified geo-blocking, the free movement of non-personal data, and a new framework for the protection of personal data are undeniable advances for Europe. Let me briefly say a bit more about EU action on geo-blocking. This is important from a single market perspective. European consumers were facing discrimination when accessing goods and services based on nationality or place of residence. I've made this experience. I guess that some of the Europeans here have made the same experience. When trying to buy goods online from a vendor in a EU country, we were redirected, where we're not residing, redirected often to the specific national website, often with higher prices. Such practice is contrary to the principle of the single market and has been banned as of December last year. The aim is to offer consumers a wide choice of products at competitive prices. It also creates legal certainty and a better level playing field for businesses, in particular SMEs, expanding their potential customer base across borders. Ultimately, it preserves the principle of the single market, and I'm a fan. And geo-blocking also plays a significant role in the debate on the so-called dual food quality, of which you might have heard in the last few days, where there are allegations that brands sell identically branded and packaged food with different composition in different parts of Europe. But if you can buy online without restrictions, that addresses in part the problem. So in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, the e-commerce sector is so dynamic that new challenges arise daily. Things change rapidly. As e-commerce matures, new technology come in and affect the landscape we operate in. Access to data, artificial intelligence are more and more central to the capacity of internet platforms to match demand and supply across the single market. The food sector may well be the emerging field of opportunity for online sales. In this context, it will be up to businesses and policymakers to allow for e-commerce in the food area to develop to its full potential without compromising food safety and consumer expectations. We need to take into account the specificity of the food sector, its cultural and health component. Our common objective will be to look at issues that enable digital transformation that are of EU-wide importance. We need to see where we can offer cross-country solutions without jeopardizing the trust and confidence of our consumers in the quality, safety, and fairness of the food delivered to their door. During our discussion on how to promote digitalization in the food supply chain, we asked how to best accelerate in the take-up of digital solutions for food. There was broad consensus among food supply chain businesses and member state authorities that we need a comprehensive, holistic approach. We need a shared vision among all actors along the food chain, including on how to best promote e-commerce of food. We need to be inclusive and provide solutions applicable for companies of all sizes. This is the message I would like to leave you with, the importance of working together for a well-functioning food supply chain that responds to consumer demands and embraces digital opportunities. Thank you.